But it pain in every language, man. Pain, pain, pain. Me feeling pain. It why it, yeah, yeah. So that and one serious thing to speak about in this segment, even though we're trying to keep it mellow in this part of the program on a Friday, the issue of idiot Jamaicans. Idiot Jamaicans. Stoning buses that are bought with our money. No, this is beyond politics. This is not labor right bus. It's not PNP bus. It's not UPP bus. It's not JPU bus. It's not NNN bus. Taxpayers' money by bus is free bus. And idiot Jamaicans out there stoning the buses. Low lives. Low lives people who are very down market in their thinking. Huh? Jesus. Let me restrain myself. I want them catching you see? I want them catching you. I just want them catch the first one. I'll make an example of the first one. You, as a big man or woman, camp out by Rockford side. And you camp out on the boulevard and say, what you going to stone them new buses when them come? For what? It's all right, man. Long run, short catch. It's the music, man. Give me something. It's raising concern about the rising number of sexual offense cases involving taxi drivers in St. Catherine. The DPP addressed the issue while speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Thursday.
St. Catherine, for the Easter term here that is just being completed, you will find that for every one murder case on the list, there are 2 sexual offense cases, and 40 to 50% of the accused in the rape cases, most of the cases are rape, the accused are taximen, and the age of the victims in respect of these cases with allegation is that it has been done by taximen is 12 to 16 years. St. Catherine has always been the parish where you tended to find allegations involving taxis, I would say the most compared to the other parishes. But I think in recent times, there seems to be an uptick in it.
The revelation follows the court case involving a father who pleaded guilty to raping and trafficking his underage daughter and a stepdaughter over several years. The man, a taxi driver, was sentenced to over 100 years in prison when he appeared in the Home Circuit Court on Tuesday. He was also convicted of raping another child, his neighbor, around at the same time. DPP Llewellyn says most sexual offense cases involving taximen also involve abduction.
The victims were usually children taking the taxis, and invariably it's either they are the first in the taxi heading to school, and the taximan will divert, do what he does in terms of the sex assault, and then I guess go back to his regular work. Or the child might be the last person in the taxi, so everybody else comes out, and then the taximan takes her away. And in fact, most of the rape cases involving taximen as the accused, we also had a charge for forcible abduction.
Paul Llewellyn, DPP. And Ms. Llewellyn says court records will show that while the number of sexual offense cases are on the rise, cases of murder are on the decline.
For some time over the last few years, we have noticed that the sexual offense cases in the sort of depravity that you're seeing, that it has really been on the uptick. I think you definitely had an uptick after COVID, but even before that. And I think part of it, I know a lot of people will be shocked, but I think we have to have a man in the mirror moment, because a lot of people do not regard sexual offenses with the same alarm that they view murder. And just yesterday, several of us were talking in the chambers and remarking that though we are very happy to see that the murder cases, the murder figures are going down, but we are not seeing the same emphasis by the authorities in looking at the sexual offenses.
Paul Llewellyn, Director of Public Prosecutions. Transport Minister Daryl Vaz is welcoming news that the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited, JUTC, saw an increase of $100 million in fare income for 2024. The state-owned bus company earned $1.3 billion in fares in 2024 compared to $1.2 billion in 2023.
Any self-respecting country starts with a good public transportation system, and therefore it's never too late. We are seeing the increase in revenues, and we're also seeing the increase of commuters taking JUTC. And therefore that all goes well, and it says one thing, that if you provide a good, safe, economical, and reliable transport system, persons will use it to do their day-to-day business.
The improved performance came from both passenger and charter trips. For the review period, income from passenger trips moved from 13.9 million to 17.3 million. Charters, meanwhile, moved from 87.3 million in 2023 to 100.9 million in 2024. The data is contained in the 2024 edition of the Economic and Social Survey published by the Planning Institute of Jamaica. The survey noted an expansion in routes and the start of operations outside the Kingston metropolitan area as factors contributing to the improved performance. The minister says the government intends to build on these gains.
And I intend to build on it with the additional 100 buses to make 300 in 3 years, plus, most importantly, to continue with the rural school bus system starting September with a view of covering not just the 258 schools, but the 850 odd schools in rural Jamaica. If we can do that concurrently, then we can say that Jamaica is moving towards a first world.
Daryl Vaz, Transport Minister. The opposition spokesman on transport, Phillips, is warning the public to not be misled by the government's recent announcements about expanded routes for the JUTC. Phillips is labeling the move as political theatrics ahead of the next general election.
The JUTC currently needs about 450 buses in the KMTR, even with the additional 270 buses that the government has imported. The Kingston metropolitan area, which the JUTC has an exclusive license, still does not have 300 buses to operate in. What the minister needs to focus on is how it is that we're going to get back that market share that they have given up voluntarily by bad management of the KMTR, how it is that we're going to that exclusive license that the JUTC holds, how it is that they're going to satisfy those commuters in the KMTR, which includes Portmore and Spanish Town, before all this theatrics of going into areas that has no planning within the JUTC.
Citing what he calls the abrupt rollout of long-haul and city-to-city services, Phillips says this has sparked anxiety among private operators, including publicly listed companies like Knutsford Express. He says even as the JUT saw a slight increase in fare income for 2024, the state-run bus company is still bleeding financially.
The government is celebrating a $100 million increase in revenue to the JUTC. The JUTC is bleeding with putting buses on new routes in rural Jamaica, which we support a rural bus system. The JUTC itself is going to be hemorrhaging more. The operational costs for those in the rural areas vis-a-vis trying to get back what they have lost over the 10 years in the Kingston metropolitan area is not making good business sense for the taxpayers and the JUTC itself. So the taxpayers of the country will be subsidizing the JUTC by some $10 billion this year, and the losses, the operational losses of the JUTC is over $11 billion.
Phillips, opposition spokesman on transport. Still with transport because the blind can see. That was the response from head of security at the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, Radcliffe Lewis, when asked if he believed the recent attacks on the company's buses was politically motivated. Lewis was speaking to Ricardo Brooks on Nationwide at 5 on Thursday.
Let me tell you, I'm going to answer your one way. The blind can see.
Well, let me ask you a direct question. Do you think it's politically motivated?
Again, I am going to answer you the same way. The blind can see.
It's reported that about 7:45 p.m. on Wednesday, a JUTC bus was attacked in the vicinity of Drewsland in St. Andrew. Stones were thrown at the vehicle, causing significant damage to the front windscreen. None of the passengers were injured. Lewis revealed that another bus was attacked on Thursday afternoon in Tinson Pen, Kingston.
While it was down by 6 Mile, I just get a call just before you called me a while ago. So one of our bus was attacked at Tinsipet.
Just now.
Just now.
But this is
And,
crazy.
Just now.
You're
Attack
saying a
at
bus was
Tinsipet.
attacked before you came on here just now?
Yeah, a matter of fact, if you did call earlier, I could not take the call from you because I was just called by my security officer over in Portmore, Mr. Sims, and told of what just transpired.
And there was also another incident at 5:50 p.m. on Thursday involving a bus operating in the vicinity of the power plant in Hunts Bay, Kingston. The driver reported hearing a crashing sound, and when he looked, he says he saw that a man had thrown a stone which shattered the right upper passenger glass. So those were three JUTC buses, one in the vicinity of Tinson, one in the vicinity of the Hunts Bay power plant, and one on the Washington Boulevard in the vicinity of Drewsland that were attacked by stone-throwing vandals on Wednesday and Thursday. JUTC buses. He described the current punishment as a slap on the wrist.
You see the law that governs malicious destruction of property, that is JUTC buses. The law is a slap of the wrist of those criminals. No, I am not recommending to government to make the law stiffer by passing laws for any person that damage any government property, no less than 15 years hard labor. That is exactly what I want. In other countries, destruction of government properties is a long sentence, is almost life imprisonment. But our one out here is a 10-day business. You get 10 days and 5 days. And that is it. I want the law to be more stiffer.
Lewis is also urging those who know the perpetrators behind these attacks to convince them to stop.
What would you say to the members of the community who you say are tight-lipped when you try to investigate these matters? What would you say to them this evening?
The only thing I can say to them is try and tell those persons because they know exactly who are doing this. And the boss is for everybody. Tell them to desist from stoning and damaging the JUTC buses.
Radcliffe Lewis, head of security at JUTC. He was speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Thursday. Just over 200 lives have been lost in road crashes since the start of the year. That's according to the Island Traffic Authority, ITA. In its latest report published on Thursday, the ITA says 209 people have been killed in road crashes since January. The figure represents a 1% decline compared to the corresponding period in 2024. The ITA says up to July 17, there were 182 fatal crashes. Motorcyclists lead the fatalities with 55 killed since January. Private motorcar drivers follow with 43 killed since January 1. The ITA says 4 parishes have contributed to more than half the total number of road fatalities in the first quarter of 2025. They are St. Catherine, St. Andrew, St. James, and Westmoreland. St. James had the highest number of road fatalities with 22 recorded to date. Small and medium-sized enterprises across Latin America and the Caribbean are struggling to compete globally due to a correspondent banking system designed for multinational giants. That's according to a study conducted by the credit card giant Mastercard. It found that instead of facilitating growth, traditional cross-border payment processes are holding SMEs back, forcing them to absorb high costs, hidden fees, and long delays that undermine their operations and profitability. Chevron Campbell tells us more.
Nations are increasingly turning to SMEs as their engines of growth, particularly here in Jamaica. Although small in size, SMEs represent 90% of businesses and account for 70% of employment. But a study by Mastercard revealed that these enterprises are not making the expected contribution they should to their respective countries' economic output. The study found they are struggling in the area of productivity. One part of the concern is that the very financial channels SMEs rely on for such cross-border transactions are operating an outdated principle developed with large corporations in mind. This system, which should aid agile business to trade internationally, instead penalizes them at nearly every step. One of the most significant challenges these businesses face is the high cost of sending money internationally. For small transactions, the financial burden is especially severe. For example, sending just $250 can attract fees averaging 23%. While these fees decrease with larger amounts, they remain burdensome even at higher tiers. The study found traditional banks risk alienating these businesses, potentially driving them towards alternative financial service providers offering more affordable solutions. In addition to the high upfront costs, SMEs are also losing money through hidden currency conversion charges. Delays and transaction failures add yet another layer of difficulty. The study found that while speed is critical for businesses operating across borders, the current payment infrastructure consistently fails to deliver. While payments involving the U.S. tend to perform better, about 40% of payments to non-U.S. destinations experience delays of over 4 days, and nearly 20% of them take more than 10 days to clear. The study says these slow, unreliable payments not only disrupt business operations, but also expose SMEs to increased financial and operational risks. The study concludes that SMEs are being forced to operate within a financial system that was never designed to serve them. Instead of supporting small businesses to expand globally, traditionally correspondent banking processes penalize them with high fees, hidden charges, and unacceptable delays. It says that unless the system is reformed to meet needs of smaller players, these enterprises risk being locked out of the global economy they are striving to access. Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.